conference, I've been charged with presenting the prone transverse approach, why, when, and when not. I'm Aashish Patel, and I'm a spine surgeon and chairman of the spine department at Dewey Health and Care. So I'm going to start with a case example. This is a patient, very typical 75-year-old who has increase in back pain and a reduction in the ability to walk for several years. The patient reports that he has neurogenic claudication type symptoms, but he also has radicular symptoms, right leg worse than left leg. He's tried physical therapy, epidural steroid injections, and some chiropractic treatments with some moderate improvements in his symptoms. However, he seems to be progressively getting worse. His x-rays here show multi-level spondylosis, which is typical of that age group. He has a mild reduction in his lumbar lordosis overall, 37 degrees from a pelvic incidence of 57 degrees. His MRI on the left shows his central stenosis through L4-5. He has no other neurogenic compression, neurologic compression anywhere else in his spine. On the right, you see foraminal pitches. The top picture demonstrated the right foramen being severely compressed, worse than the left. So if we poll the audience in this case and see what treatment options are out there, these are the ones that come to mind: lumbar laminectomy, decompression and fusion, posterior interbody work either through PLIF or TLIF, anterior work through ALIF, or lateral with posterior fixation. And what's becoming more of a popular treatment option here is the prone lateral interbody fusion. I want to talk a little bit between posterior interbody and lateral interbody techniques. There's a lot of data that's out there that demonstrate with the extra release from lateral interbody fusion and the bigger footprint of the interbody device that there's improvement in fusion rates and improvement in overall segmental alignment postoperatively with lateral interbody versus TLIF and PLIF. There are also studies demonstrating the improvement in perioperative data, blood loss, hospital stay, and functional recovery of the patients when you compare lateral interbody versus traditional open posterior techniques. There are some advantages of single position prone lateral interbody. I found that you can have simultaneous access to both anterior and posterior columns, which can be advantageous in certain pathologies. A lot of surgeons are familiar with the prone position. This is the position that we're most comfortable with and that we've been trained in. And we're able to perform osteotomies in this position. We're able to perform concomitant decompressions in this position, or even insertion of pedicle screws. Performing the lateral interbody in the prone position can save you a lot of time in the initial position of the patient, and also to avoid the actual flip when you're doing posterior work as well. In a situation where you're doing surgery in prone position, and maybe the pathology or the access is unfavorable, you can always abort to a TLIF or a PLIF in that case. So indications that may benefit from the prone lateral interbody technique: patients with direct decompressions that are necessary, revisions, they've already had a L4 through S1 fusion and you're adding on for adjacent segment disease at L3-4. They have previous hardware that you have to revise, or it's part of a larger spinal deformity construct, a T10 to the pelvis, that you'd like to perform interbody fusions for. In my hands and my learning curve, I started, because this is an approach that's unfamiliar to most, and was unfamiliar to me, I started with the easy cases first. L2-3, L3-4 lateral interbodies, where I was doing the work for adjacent segment disease or one-level fusions. As I gained comfort and experience, I then expanded my indications for prone lateral, to include L4-5 cases, to include cases with multi-level fusions, like L2 through L5 fusion. What I found is that from prone positioning and then releasing of the disc space, I was able to obtain far greater lordosis correction using prone lateral without the need for osteotomies. I found myself doing less facet releases and less osteotomies in order to accomplish my alignment goals. On the right case here, you can see a case of L3 to the pelvis. When going down to L5S1, you can integrate a TLIF at L5S1 and go into the pelvis all in a minimally invasive fashion in order to accomplish your goals, and all without performing a flip. Some cases, deformity cases with major coronal sagittal alignment issues, you can perform a prone ACR as part of your larger construct in order to gain sagittal and coronal correction. There are some cases where prone lateral may be difficult. If the nerve is located anteriorly in the disc space, access may be difficult. You should trace the MRI starting from L2 down to the disc space, especially at L4-5, so as to avoid any potential injury to the lumbar plexus. If there's a high riding iliac crest, access to L4-5 may be difficult, and a TLIF may be a better procedure, or ALIF. If patients have abnormal vascular anatomy, vessels that are adherent to the anterior disc space or lateralized in the surgical corridor, this is a relative contraindication. And then patients that are larger, difficult to assess a specific BMI criteria, but the longest retractor blades are 200 millimeters in order to gain access. So large patients are difficult to access. And so if you find yourself in this situation where access being difficult, but you book the case as a prone lateral, and you find it difficult to access that segmental level, in the beginning when you're going through your learning curve, book the case prone lateral with a possible TLIF, so that the device and industry bring their TLIF equipment for you, especially early in the learning curve. Our clinical experience for the last 3 years performing this surgery in 150 patients, 250 levels, you can see that most of our cases are L4-5, which is typical of pathology here. The complications that we had are very similar to the complications that we have for just lateral interbody fusion. There were 3 cases in which we aborted the lateral in our first 30 cases and transitioned to a TLIF instead. There were 3 cases in which we ruptured the ALL, all within the first 30 cases as well. This is because there's a tendency for the retractor to migrate anteriorly. So retractor stability is the main thing to be mindful of when you're doing these cases. And there are various solutions in order to improve the stability of the retractor that are going to be made available next year. What I recommend is always placing the ALL retractor around the anterior vertebral body between the ALL and the vessels in order to understand where you are. And once I started doing that, I had no ruptures of the ALL. I malpositioned one implant early on in my learning curve, pushing it too posteriorly and having contralateral radicular issues, and I had to revise that. And then I had 1 case of permanent femoral nerve issue and 2 cases of a very temporary mild femoral nerve issue that resolved in 6 weeks. And you know, these are things that can happen in lateral, in traditional lateral as well. So be mindful of where that nerve is, and use neuromonitoring when you're doing these cases. The good news is I had no cases of bowel perforation or vascular injury, which is also highly concerning when doing these cases. So making sure that you have comfort with this approach and before you start doing it in the prone position. Here's a video of my setup of prone lateral. You can see the patient in prone position, the markings on the flank there to mark the segmental angle of approach. You can see the articulating arm on the same side. This is the setup with the Mayos that are adjacent to the table, the back table that's crowded around me. Here's my skin incision for an L4-5 surgery. You can see me go into the posterior vertebral body, using finger dissection through the obliques, sweeping my finger. I'm feeling the quadratus lumborum above me until I feel the psoas. The dilator gets placed over my finger, and then here I'm holding the dilator as I check my lateral so that I know where I am in the disc space before I place my wire. This is all under triggered EMGs. Placement of the dilators, and then here's the retractor. I placed a number 9 glove over the retractor as well, so that as I expand, it creates like a cocoon, so that intraperitoneal fat or retroperitoneal fat can't go inside the retractor to obscure my vision. Here I'm making final adjustments of the retractor, and now with the lights I can see within the disc space, and then conventional lateral into-body technique with disc prep, trialing up, and then placement of the final implant here. Here you can see I can go straight into the posterior work without the need for a flip. So going back to the case that we presented before, where it's the patient with L4-5 spondylosis, severe central canal stenosis, and bilateral foraminal right, west, and left stenosis. With the treatment options that were provided, I think if you asked me what I would do for this patient 3 years ago, I would do a TLIF with a TLIF, and I would do a central canal decompression. If you ask me now what I would do a prone lateral with a central canal decompression, all without flipping, all in the same position, but this will allow me to give the patient a larger interbody device, better lordosis restoration, and a better chance for a future. Thank you for your time.